name is Ashlyn Greening, and for my persuasive speech, I chose the issue of minimum wage, make minimum wage a livable wage, and I'm joined here today by two audience members, my dad and my sister. Hello. For decades, the American dream promised to families across the country has been only an unattainable, trivial dream. Americans who work 2 to 3 jobs can barely afford basic aspects to live, like housing, food, transportation, and electricity, trash, and water bills. Americans deserve to live comfortably and afford the cost of living in order to efficiently contribute to their personal life and community, and for wealth inequalities to be diminished. I come from a middle-class family that has struggled with the financial burden of inflated housing, grocery, and healthcare costs. My parents have had to sacrifice their own health insurance funding to make sure that my siblings and I had proper health insurance ourselves, because their well-earned pay did not cover entire families. I'm sure many of you who have struggled with funding the basic necessities of life as an individual, or if you serve as the provider of your family, and with wages you work so hard for, these endeavors are not supported. To begin, I will discuss the need for a change reflected in the disparities of minimum wage employed Americans. Secondly, I will explain the steps of a proper plan for my audience to partake in. And lastly, I will present the benefits to society with this plan of livable wages nationwide. For my first main point, I will be discussing the need for livable wages with the rising grocery costs and housing. Many Americans with a minimum wage job cannot afford basic necessities like housing, food, and health care. Inflation and grocery prices in the housing industry concern the majority of Americans and their financial budgeting. In a survey conducted by Associated Press and NORC in the summer of 2025, grocery prices were found to be a prominent factor of financial stress for over half of Americans. The stress surrounding grocery prices has surpassed financial concerns about rent, health care, and student debt. The Joint Center for Housing Studies summarizes the main points of a Harvard University housing report, stating that for the 3rd year in a row, the number of renters burdened with the cost of housing and utilities has reached an all-time high of 22.6 million. They define cost-burdened renters as those who spend more than 30 to 50% of their income on housing, and this is shown here in the diagram. Healthcare costs are projected to be on the rise for Americans, further strengthening financial burdens. According to an article published by the Kaiser Family Foundation, or the KFF, if the enhanced premium tax credits from the 2021 Affordable Care Act expire as predicted in 2026, enrollees will be faced with a higher payments by an average of $1,016 or 114%. This service by the Affordable Care Act gave financial assistance to middle-class enrollees in the form of a tax credit, with the federal government covering the remaining costs. The projected increase in these payments and the expiration of tax credits in the new year are followed by 2 factors: changes made to tax credit calculations by the Trump administration and growing premiums in 2026. The KFF goes into more explicit detail if eligible Americans lose premium tax credits from the Affordable Care Act. On average, a 60-year-old couple making $85,000 would see a yearly premium payment rise by over $22,600 in 2026, after accounting for an annual premium increase of 18%. Meanwhile, a 45-year-old earning $20,000 in a non-Medicaid expansion state would see their premium payments for a benchmark rise plan rise from $0 to $420 per year on average from the loss of enhanced premium tax credits. And this is the premium tax payments in 2026 will more than double if ACA enhanced premium tax credits expire. After going over the need for adequate and comfortable minimum wages, I will discuss the plan to accomplish this goal. Raising the minimum wage to a livable level ensures fair compensation, reduces poverty, and strengthens communities. This is possible by my three-step plan that consists of staying informed about state and federal legislation regarding wage, participating in community demonstrations, and most vital, voting. Social demonstrations and activism by minimum wage workers shows how influencing industry and state federal government to improve wages is possible. In a report from the National Employment Law Project, the 5 for $15 movement is commemorated for its accomplishments in influencing workers across industries who have suffered low wages to organize and strike in their workplace. Since 2012, over 26 million workers have received higher wages, collectively earning $150 billion additional compensation. Additionally, in the report from NELP, the $5 for $15 has influenced 29 states along with 60 counties to enact higher minimum wages since 2012, with many starting their wages at $15 or above. Americans have a prominent influence on minimum wage measures with the power of their vote in elections. An article from NPR reports on results of a ballot measure to raise the minimum wage and grant paid sick leave to workers. Voters in Alaska and Missouri approved of this measure, thus steadily increasing pay from $11.73 to $15 an hour in Alaska, and increasing and $12.30 to $15 an hour in Missouri. However, the data from MIT's Living Wage Calculator mentioned in the NPR article explains that the $15 an hour increase is still inadequate in covering expenses and supporting individuals and families in most areas of the country, including Alaska and Missouri. Advancing on to my last point, I will go over the benefits of accomplishing livable minimum wages for American citizens. Individuals and families who work minimum wage make enough to live comfortably and support their family members. Higher wages address and reduce inequalities like the racial wealth gap, thus building stronger communities. With an increase in wages, structural issues like the racial wealth gap are properly handled and lowered, leaving room for community building. Analysis of the 5 for $15 movement from NLEP also states that the movement is associated with a decrease of racial wealth gaps, with the loss of 40.3% in black and white wealth gap and a loss of 29.4% in the Latinx white wealth gap, both in higher wage states. Livable wage reconstructs the lives of Americans, making life less stressful and providing for family less of a financial obstacle. Paul R. Schaefer, PhD, argues that states with higher minimum wages are less likely to struggle with food insecurity in households with children, from Gamma Network. In conclusion, it is ridiculous to assume that the current nation's minimum wage suffices the lives of hardworking Americans. With prices of housing and rent, groceries, and healthcare reaching all-time highs, it is crucial for minimum wages to be anything but minimum. So, what can you do? The battle for livable wages will not happen overnight, but with your effort and attention, it becomes more achievable. Stay on top of state and federal decisions and legislation regarding minimum wages. Join activist groups or participate in community demonstrations. And most importantly, vote like your life depends on it, because it sure does. Thank you.